Well, hello there and welcome to this discussion about tourism involving Canberra and the capital region. I'm Joe Prevedello and I'm joined by the proprietor of Canberra Guided Tours, Canberra's leading tourism business, Neil Hermes. G'day, Neil.
Hi, Joe.
In this particular episode, Neil, we're going to talk about travelling to Canberra on a trip to Australia and including it as part of your itinerary or your schedule. So if you're from a different part of the world and you've decided to take a trip to Australia, obviously there are must see places for first time trips, second time trips, third time trips. I guess for this purpose, let's talk in the context of a first time trip.
Sure. Yep.
To Australia. How would you fit Canberra into an itinerary?
Okay. So the first thing is that we've got international visitors that are coming to Australia. Australia is, a fabulous country. We have amazing things to see. Almost anywhere in Australia, we have exciting, interesting things for anyone from around the world to see. We're a safe country. We are a country where it's easy to get access to various places. We have wonderful landscapes, fabulous people. And so, yes, we're spoilt. People are spoilt by the opportunities they have to come to Australia. And clearly people will always want to visit on a first trip places like Sydney and Melbourne and perhaps the Outback and the Barrier Reef. There's some places that people visit. So it's always a bit of a dilemma for people visiting Australia. And Australia's large. It's a huge country. But where do you go to on a trip that might be a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks on your first trip? And I would suggest that Canberra is one of those vital places that should be on anyone's first visit list.
Okay, why?
So why? Canberra is very conveniently located to both Sydney and Melbourne. And both of those, they're the two most popular destinations when people fly in, for example, to Australia.
Okay, so let me stop you there. So you're saying you can easily go to Canberra from Sydney or Melbourne and sort of have it as part of the itinerary for those two cities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, if you're going to Sydney, you might have 2 or 3 days in Sydney, say on a fortnight's trip, 2 or 3 days in Sydney, and you might be planning a couple of days in Melbourne. Canberra's in between Melbourne and Sydney. It's only it's an hour's flight, half an hour's flight from Sydney, 3 hours drive from Sydney. And many people on their first trip to Australia travel between Sydney and Melbourne. Canberra can be easily, in terms of time, easily in terms of money, included in the program. So the first thing is it's very convenient to include. A second feature about Canberra is that Canberra has within it some of the things that encapsulate the very Australian spirit. So you get to see the very Australian things. We have fabulous museums, fabulous institutions around the city. The city was designed by Americans in the early 1900s, and it encapsulates many of the great achievements of Australia in one place where you can visit the sites all within 10 minutes of one another. So once you're in Canberra, things are very convenient as well. And a third reason I'd often give to people for visiting Canberra on their first trip is I love wildlife. Wildlife's my bag, and I love showing people wildlife. And so many people, when they come to Australia, one of their top things is they want to see a wild kangaroo. Well, it's hard to see a wild kangaroo. Kangaroos are very common in Australia, but it's hard to see them in the middle of Sydney, the middle of Melbourne, the middle of Adelaide, the middle of Brisbane. And sadly, many people who visit from overseas to Australia for a fortnight, for 2 weeks, come to Australia and they don't actually see a wild kangaroo. In Canberra, we have kangaroos. I have kangaroos in my garden. Everyone has kangaroos in the street. Kangaroos are common. So in amongst everything else, you can also see these iconic images of kangaroos in the suburbs as well. So it's a small thing, but I think it's an important thing on that first trip that you get to experience that as well.
That's right. So there's a real cross-section of reasons for why you would come to Canberra on a first trip to Australia. I mean, we've got to sort of debunk some myths here, don't we? I mean, Canberra's not a boring place to go to, is it? I mean, when people come to Australia, they think about, okay, the Barrier Reef. We've got to go up there. We've got to swim with the corals and the beautifully coloured fish.
And they should. Sort of and it's fantastic. And we would promote that often.
We want to climb the Sydney Harbour Bridge. Yeah. Or, we'd like to walk around Uluru at dawn. Yeah. These are they're the iconic Australian things to do. But you can get just as good an experience by coming to Canberra, and it's very convenient to do so. It's just lesser known.
It is lesser known. And look, I'm not saying that people should spend a week in Canberra on our first visit. Far from that. I think that Canberra is the sort of place where if you're coming to Australia for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks,
Include it.
you should include maybe 2 nights in Canberra in a program. And that will give you the opportunity to capture, and because it's easy to do, it's cheap to do, and it gives you that sense of Australia that you don't get.
You learn about the country.
Yeah, there's an opportunity. It's not all about learning, but it's about an experience of the city from the country from a different perspective to what you might get if you were just swimming on a beach somewhere. So it does capture that, and I really do think that in a 3-week program, not to include 2 nights in Canberra would be a mistake. And I would also be saying, look, go to the Barrier Reef, go to the Outback, go to Sydney, go to Melbourne. Those things are vital in that experience. And then you'll get the full rounded experience of the things that you know about and expect to see in a country, like Australia.
All right, well, there you have it. If you're coming to Australia, make sure that you think about it. You spend a bit of time in Canberra, as Neil says, even just a couple of days, or even just one day, if that's all you have. You won't regret it. Thanks, Neil.
Thanks very much, Joe.